Okay, hello. So we're going to carry on with our character model. Last time we were doing the body, and this time we're going to focus on the hand. So much like last time, you're probably best getting reference of a hand from the top, whether it be your own hand or someone else's. It doesn't matter, hand's a hand. You will be obviously using your hand during this, because I'd like to make it clear that the best reference for this, okay, is yourself, because you can see your hand in front of you, so you can study it. So yeah, you will be using that. So there will be points when I will discuss the fact that I'm looking at my own hand, but generally this is kind of just an overview of how to, or technique, just to create a generic hand. And I'd like to point out as well that everyone does this differently. There is no set way to create a hand. Just like I've said so far, there is no set way to create any sort of model. However, hopefully this will at least give you sort of an idea of how to get a hand started into a basic shape. So yeah, first things first, ensure that you've got reference all set up, that you've got your hand. You should know that from the first tutorial in this series. And the next thing we're going to do is create a box. So as always, box for our model. So I'm going to place that there, bring it up, and have 4x4 length and width segments. Okay, and we're going to convert this to an editable poly. And I'm going to make this see-through, and in Max the button quick shortcut to do that is Alt X, or alternatively if you go to display, you can find it down here, see-through, see? Okay, so we can now see through the model. So in polygon mode, we're just going to shape this a bit now so it meets key points. So the first key point is there. This is where the hand's going to start. The next key point, and I might have to rejig this in a minute, is going to be here. And we're going to have another one here. And another point here. And finally on the end here. And what we're going to do is we're going to start pulling these in and shaping it. And it's going to look a little rough at the moment, but that won't matter. We'll do more work on it later. Okay, let's pull that. Shape that up a bit. I'm going to average it out. Okay, let's pull that down a bit more. It's about there, so that'll probably do. Pull that back, because we're ignoring the thumb for now. Pretend it's not even there, as if it's been cut off. So there'll be a lot of moving around. Okay, lowest part. I'll pull this down to here. And there, and there. And then once again, we're just going to neaten that up, get the flow lines correct. And flowing nice and neatly. Okay. Okay. Right. Not a bad start. Not possibly the best, but what the hell? It's kind of looking okay. Alright. So, with our starting point achieved, still messing with it. Still not satisfied. There we go. Right, so with our starting point achieved, the next thing we're going to do is look at it from the height and bring that down so it's relatively square. Pull it up a little bit, because obviously we haven't got a side view and we can't work out exactly how thick the hand should be. This is where you refer to your hand. Have a look at your hand. It's not thick in all places. It actually gets quite thin and thicker in other places. So I think that'll probably do. We can always thicken it up later. And it's quite rectangular as well. So that kind of looks about right. And you also notice that your hand curves towards the little finger, so it doesn't go entirely straight. So if we tilt it like that, and then take that, let's also select through the center there. Okay, and just curve it like so. That's more like how your hand actually is. In fact, it should be straighter than that at the top. I've screwed it up a tiny bit. Yes, that's better. Curve it off and pull it down a bit more. So as I said, you will need to refer to your hand for this. Okay, you can't rely on your reference all the time, and obviously there is some free-form element to it, especially with the hand. Okay, so that looks fine, that looks fine, that looks fine. Right, let's continue. So the next part we're going to do is we're going to create some cuts for the fingers. So we'll do that here. Okay, so using connect, just one in each. Okay, and press tick. And also let's establish the thumb while we're at it. So down around here, we're going to start establishing the thumb. And to do this, there's a little trick I use. Scale that up, rotate it round, pull it down. There you go, rotated it the wrong way. Rotate it round, pull it out. Okay, just check it from the top and rotate it like so. So it looks roughly correct, and it will mean, yes, that you will have to go back in here and start tweaking to clean things up. However, that is not so much of a problem. So there we go. We can then tweak this a little bit more just to clean up that edge there. And there will be plenty more cleaning up to do. However, I won't go into that in too much detail. This is more of an overview how to create a hand. If you know how to model, even basically, then you should be able to figure out how to clean this up. So there we go. That's the first part set up. So now we can start working on the fingers and start extruding them out. Now, the best finger to start from is the middle finger right here. It's the longest, but it's also the straightest. You'll notice the rest of these fall off on angles. So try modeling on an angle is really annoying. So the best, sorry, the best one I find is to start with this one. So let's extrude that out, like so. And yeah, we're going to give that first tick. Pull it so far, and gonna just pull it this far to start with, and then scale it into position. A little bit more tweaking might be necessary, depends how well you've done this. I obviously haven't done it too well. There we go, I'm a bit more happy with that now. Make them a bit more central. Okay, and let's continue extruding this out. So extrude, pull it out to here, pull it in a little bit, okay, and extrude again. Yeah, pull it in a little bit more, and extrude once more till we get to this bit here. Okay, so now with the end bit, we can use this middle bit to try and form a sort of tip. Okay, but I think we could do with another cut right about here. So we will do that in a minute. So using connect tool, quick cut all the way through. Okay, and that will give us another edge, just to give it some thickness here. Okay, because at the moment it doesn't, it didn't really look like a tip as such. And we can do that for the other edges as well, but not just yet. For now, we're going to keep this reasonably low poly, just while we shape it somewhat. So, next thing we need to do is pull the finger down, like so. And I'm just going to rotate it slightly also, so it should come to a taper. Because if you look at your own fingers, if you put them out straight, they will taper down, but the underneath bit will remain relatively flat. Not perfectly flat, but relatively flat. So if we pull that up a little bit, and I'm going to taper it just a tiny bit, but not too much, certainly not as much as the top, because as I said, it doesn't taper terribly. Yes, okay, so that will do. Back in top view, a little bit more cleaning up. And now this is a part actually that I suppose we should have done before, but it doesn't make any difference that we're looking at it now. Using the cut tool, and I think this is probably terribly important, and I should have missed it. Just connect up like so, like dot to dot. These verts like this, because this will help form our knuckles, and we were getting to a crucial part there where they were going to start creeping their way in. We do the same underneath as well. There we go. Awesome. Okay, just re-establish that curve, and notice I am constantly tweaking it. You probably have to do exactly the same. It's not going to end up perfect. Okay, so that's starting to get there a bit. Now what we can do is from top view, select all the way down the middle. So it's got both sides selected, and just scale it out like so. And this will just give it a little bit of height. And what we can also do, deselect it and pull down the sides a little bit if necessary. Now, the tip at the moment looks extremely strange, so we need to fix that. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull this down like that, and studying my own finger, and we're not going to get this perfect, but we get it to look somewhat like a tip. Pull that in, pull that in, and hopefully that will form somewhat. Pull that down, a tip. Yeah, there we go. Right, now what we can look at is obviously these edges here. So with this finger, we're going to create a little split on top. Alright, this will help it bend more smoothly, so we're going to chamfer that like so. and pull it down. Because bear in mind, this is a low poly one. I mean, you could add more cuts in and define this finger far more if you wanted to. But this is only a very low poly hand, so I'm not going to define it that much. That will do. So this would help it deform. It's probably also a good idea to possibly have one here also. Yes, that would be a good idea. That down. There we go. Right, so we now have the basis of one finger. So what we next need to do is just give it a little bit of a bend. And the reason we're doing this is so it's not entirely straight. So if you lay your hand flat, you will notice that it isn't actually completely flat. It always has a slight bend to it. So that's exactly what we're doing here. And on top, we'll just pull that up a bit, just to establish some curve to it and some shape. Same here. Oops. Pull the whole finger down would help. And there we go. A finger. Excellent. Now the great thing is that because we've got one, we can now use this finger. We can now use this finger across the other. Well, we can use it to create our other fingers. So let's do that. Let's take that finger, copy it using Shift and drag, and we're going to just rotate this around a little bit, and we'll pop that into place, just scaling it a tiny bit for the index finger. So it just should just fit relatively nicely. Okay, let's have a look at that. Yeah, I'm going to scale that thickness up a tiny bit, but I believe that is a finger. Great, that's another one. And there's a there is something that's not necessarily true of yourself, but it's true of most people, is that your index finger and your ring finger are the same size. Now that does vary by the person. I'm not going to go into the science of that, but it can vary. So if you rotate the index finger as a sneaky little cheat, because nobody is probably going to notice, certainly not in game, and certainly not if it's for a low poly character like this. You know, nobody's going to care about that. So rotate that and do the same for here. I'm going to copy this, except the little finger is going to have to be dramatically scaled down. And I'm trying to line it up with this as best as possible. Doesn't matter if it's not too perfect, as long as it's reasonably. There we go. I feel I've done a bad job of that. I should give that another whack. Yes, that will do. Okay. So that's that. Now we've got to connect it up. Of course, that means deleting the old faces underneath. So get rid of them. Bye bye. And gone. And then, of course, there's some welding to be done, which takes a little bit of time. Okay. Just snap it all together. At this point, just knock it up together as best as possible. So we're just going to do that. Now there'll be some of these where they're very, very near. That's right, that's correct. Just collapse them, snap them together. And the same here as well. Okay, we're going to collapse them. And it's not going to look terribly perfect at the moment, but we'll work on that. With this one on top, we can weld that to there, and that to there. Okay, and the same here. Collapse these two. Wide that up. Okay, let's have a look at that then. Right, that's definitely getting there. We can now shape this a little bit more, because at the moment it was horrible. This is a case of looking at your hand again to notice that it thickens out about here. Okay, underneath we can pull this out a notch. Okay, start defining the palm a little bit. And while we're at that, it's well worth looking at how this indents, because this it dips in ever so slightly. Oh dear. Yes, the hand, just like drawing, is not an easy thing. So there will be mistakes, but do not panic. There is. Okay, start pulling that down as well. Form the back a bit. Okay, I think it's the thumb time. I think it's time to bring that into the equation. So let's create that. And that really is just created in the exact same way that the fingers were made. So we're just going to extrude it out. But you've got to bear in mind, keeping your hand in you've got to bear in mind you should model it in a relaxed position. Just like I bent the fingers here, it should be, modelled in such a way that it looks relaxed. If you just let your hand flop, and you let your thumb just hang there, you'll see what the relaxed position is. So I'm going to model it in that now. So that will require me to scale this. Okay, go to top view, pull it out a little bit, and we're going to establish this right here. Okay, so this is where it gets a little bit tricky. Let's pull the handle, it's a bit close to that for working. Okay, let's extrude that next bit out. So keep switching between views. Definitely do not stay in perspective. Use your isometric views as well. A lot of people would think it was very dirty to model purely in perspective. I don't, but I think you do get better results working in all your views. Switch the pivot if you need to. Get more control over it. Okay, so looking at my thumb, because now my thumb's going to come into play as reference. I do not like how big that is up there. That needs to be smaller. So against my reference, I'm going to rebel there and say, nope, I do not agree with that. And feel free to do that. If you do not agree with your reference, it doesn't look correct to you, then it won't look correct to someone else probably. Ask someone, if you really are unsure, see what their opinion is. Extrude this out for the last bit. Okay, so we have now got a thumb. Okay, that's kind of getting there. Not going to say I'm thrilled, but it is getting there. Okay, so notice that I did just scale the end in there, so that helped establish that. And also now we can do the exact same thing as we did with the fingers and just pull that down a little bit. And that should do a good job of that. I would, just to keep things nice and tidy, notice there's a cut down there. I'd do the exact same thing with the thumb on here. I'll just create another cut. Just keep it tidy that way. Okay. Right. That kind of does it. Looks relatively neat. Now, we could split this edge here if we wanted to. I'm going to try it. I'm not sure of whether I'll regret this or not, but I'm going to try it anyway. Split that, chamfer it. No, I do not regret that. It just needs more work. Okay. Now the reason is because the thumb didn't really look like it had any thickness. So by doing that, it now gives it some. So yes, do that. Let's pull that up there. Pull that back. Yep, okay. Let's just clean this up here. A little bit of free form. So once again, this is down to your judgment, okay? And that, I'd say probably about does it. Yeah. I'll pull that in just to make it look a little neater. And there will be areas that will constantly need tweaking, and as I said, I'm not going to be constantly tweaking them in this tutorial, because otherwise I could go on for hours. I could just go on for hours. So I'll make that last change there. And worth noting, with edges like this that are annoying and the wrong way around, just turn them. So remove, turn, like so. Ooh, I didn't weld that edge. Ooh, damn. Right, let's weld that up. I missed any else? No. Okay. Alright. Well, suffice to say, I'm just a bit happy at that. I still think it could do with a lot of work, but it's much, much better. So with places like down here, we can just clean that up by welding these off to connections like so, because we want it to remain relatively clean. And you start seeing now we actually do have a hand, and if we do just a few last things, so mainly to do with the back here, just pulling that up a tiny bit. We should have reference look. Yeah, it's pretty thick at the back there. I've done these quite a lot. I've done quite a lot of hands in my time. You know, in quite high detail. And you know what? I still have to look at reference. So don't feel bad about doing this. Definitely never feel like you have to know this off the top of your head. Always check reference constantly, because everyone else does. It's such a misconception that people can just do it. Sure, I can model this off the top of my head, but I definitely wouldn't end up with as good a hand as if I looked at reference. So there we go. I think that's about right. Let's now just scale that out, or extrude it, sorry. Poor terminology mark. Right, let's pull that out. Just shape it. Okay. Oh, and we're getting there now. Okay. Extrude it once more. I'm going to pull it right out. And this would be where the forearm would begin. Okay, so notice there is a slight twist. Normally, I find I have to manually twist it. I probably will with this part. Turn off local. Just give it a little twist there. Like so. And we'll clean this up here. It's probably a little bit thick, but what the hell. Too fine. And that is finally it. There we go. I'm going to leave it at that, because I think that about sums it up. So let's have a look at what we've got. Turn off that. There we go. One hand. And as I said, there's always areas that can be tweaked, like this. Make sure that your shape looks correct. But that's a basic low poly hand. Oh, one last thing I should point out. Make sure that this is correct under here, because this can affect, like this, see it, you can see that indents in. It can affect the look of the hand. That should fall down like this and curve all the way under the hand. So that, I think, is the last thing. It just helps define the palm that bit more. I'd say that was it. As I said, I could be tweaking this all day, but I'm not going to. Ha ha ha. I'm going to leave it at that. Okay? So, I say that, and here I am again. The last thing I would also do is create a cut in here, just for when the hand bends. That's more of an animation tip, because obviously the hand is going to constantly be bending, and you'll need that extra little bit there just for deformation reasons. Alright, other than that, there we go. Let's call it a day. Right, so I hope that was helpful, and I hope it helps you get started. Obviously, as I said, I mean, this is the template. I mean, you could go on and you could add tons more detail if you wanted to, tons more cuts. Depends how big your try count is, but obviously it's a starting point for you. So I hope that is somewhat helpful. And yeah, as I said, you probably will end up constantly tweaking it. But like I said, also, it is a template. Anyway, thanks for watching, because I'm wittering. And next video, I'll move on to the head. Yes. Okay.